Malabar Tor Lore, Part 2. The red paint. "Mix it like this," said Raquel. She ground wet clay and herbs beneath her pestle with rhythmic strokes. The very act of creating the paint is the prayer. Yashir grasped her own stone pestle, pulled her bowl closer, and imitated the priestess. Pound, lift, scatter a handful of herbs into the bowl, pound again. The orcs sat close together, knee to knee, bowls held in the curve of their bent knees. Raquel chanted softly, swaying with her movements. Gradually, as the group's rhythm strengthened, her voice gained, matching in volume. Moloch, pound. Witness, lift. Our deeds, scatter. The honor of preparing tribal paint went to a handful of the chief's daughters. Yashir had never sat in the circle before. In prior years, she'd gathered the herbs and the clay, but nothing more. Now she sat at Raquel's right hand, place of honor. Pride washed through the young wood orc. Clearly, she'd been chosen as an apprentice. Moloch, pound. Give us, lift. Blood, scatter. At the final word, the women threw back their heads and released Moloch's call, a throaty howl that echoed through the trees and nearby cliffs. Raquel signaled their work's completion. The tribe lined up to be painted with the fresh red battle clay. Raquel waved those she deemed unworthy or unfit for the battle aside. They weren't allowed to partake in the painting ritual. When Raquel motioned to Yashir to step from the line, Yashir painted her lips to protest, then pursed them tightly. To question Raquel's judgment would bring dishonor. Bowing her head in confused anger, Yashir joined the handful of unselected orcs. Raquel looked over the unselected and pulled Yashir to her side. Moloch chose you to perform the next ritual, child. Take the blade and remember, Moloch watches you. Guiding Yashir's hand, Raquel leaned over the empty vessel and slid the young orc's blade across her outstretched neck. Raquel's hand did not falter, even as she slipped from one consciousness in order to provide the next with the sacred blood of the true warrior. The voice of the people. Change is in the wind, the leaves, the flow of water. Even the animals seem to sense a difference. The voice of the people silenced. The Sylvaner had died, not unexpected, but an event often attended by varying degrees of turmoil. Had the city come first, or the Sylvaner? No one seemed to know, nor care. There was once chaos, then came generations of structure. Well, something like structure. Organized mayhem, more like. The next Sylvaner, a young lad poised to take up the mantle. They're waiting, the attendant said. She held out an alabaster goblet filled with fermented broth. I know, give me a moment. Indenir closed his eyes and took a deep breath before accepting the ceremonial cup. The Sylvaner. The title wasn't officially his until the wedding, but he could already feel the changes. The beat of a moth's wings near his ear. Indenir felt his new identity whispering to him in quick pulses. It tickled. The Sylvaner represented the wood elves. He or she would feel the will of the people and act upon it. The connection went both ways, as his or her influence could also sway the wood elves. And his people were nervous. The Wedding Feast, a memoir. By Neral, also known as Beartail. The memoir is undated. My children, Neral sets this down to give insight into the strange ways of the wood elves amongst whom some of you travel. Beware their vengeful ways. Preparations began months ago for the wedding feast of the two highest wood elves. Their union shows that the forest and its people are one, hence a very large feast. As a trader, I've often been tasked with providing tidbits for royalty. I name no names, but freely admit to providing biscuits dusted with moon sugar for banquets in Eldenroot on more than one occasion. Still, this wedding feast required many things outside my purview, and I was forced to make some last-minute changes. To get 50 vats of beef broth, I supplemented 30 vats available by adding root vegetable broth. Knowing the wood elves are not squeamish about the dead, I provided 10 crates of bone marrow from whatever bones were available, asking no questions as to their origins. But cake with no flour? Never had I seen such a thing before. I consulted with several wood elf bakers who assured me such a thing was possible, as wood elves eat nothing green unless prepared by outsiders. Given that, their restrictions that I provide cakes without flour flummoxed me. I got a couple of recipes and checked them with my suppliers, none of whom could provide the desired quantity in time. Thus, I set about making them myself. I thinned the eggs with water to make them stretch. I added arrowroot and powdered flaxseed to thicken it. Sugar provided the most dear component of the cakes, so I added a little ground chalk to reduce the actual amount of sugar needed. The taste was similar to cake, very similar, and since they took so little time and gold to make, my profit doubled on the cakes alone. It was the substitution of flaxseed oil whipped with lard instead of butter that proved my undoing, and the undoing of many a guest's bowels. Not only did the wood elves rescind any future contracts, but they shaved my tail and confiscated all of the gear and goods that I'd left behind in my hasty retreat. Never, my children, offer to supply goods for a wood elf feast. It will only end in tears. The Woodsman. Willowleg rubbed his ankle, not broken, just twisted. He stood, putting weight on it very carefully. Good, it would hold. He'd fallen while on a journey through Valenwood. One of his legs was thinner than the other. Sometimes he forgot. Now to figure out where I am, Willowleg said. He looked at the swaying leaves high above, the hint of blue sky occasionally peeking through. To anyone but a wood elf, those brief glimpses would convey nothing, but Willowleg immediately turned to continue on his way. Soon he realized he wasn't alone. A little to his left walked another wood elf, dark green hair hanging unkempt about his face. Willowleg, used to travelling alone, noticed that his silent companion adjusted his pace to remain close without overtaking him. Going to Valenesti too? Willowleg asked. Yes. Willowleg said congenially, I hope to reach the Summerside before it's too late. The green-haired wood elf said, You'll be fine. His tone indicated he didn't wish to speak further, so Willowleg simply nodded and kept walking. They travelled together, silently for the rest of the day. When Willowleg stopped to rest, the stranger also stopped. Willowleg shared water and dried meat. Then they began the last part of their journey. The trees thinned out, leaving a clearing into which the Valenesti fit perfectly. At the clearing's edge, the stranger stopped and put a hand on Willowleg's arm. Surprised, Willowleg realized the green-haired elf's skin was rough and thick, like bark. Stay here, the stranger said, murmuring an incantation. Willowleg, unable to move or speak, watched his companion walk to Valenesti's base and touch its bark with its forehead. The tree city shuddered and began to move, slowly lifting its roots from the earth. As the green-haired elf walked off, leading Valenesti away, Willowleg felt a strange spell over him break, and movement returned with a tingling force through his limbs. He glanced down and saw that not only had his thin leg healed, but his shoes were missing. The Woodsman, Willowleg whispered in awe. The Woodsman, the mythic one who led the unwary astray in the woods, was also known to bestow favours on those who knew their way. As Valenesti moved southwards, Willowleg wondered which the city was. I hope you've been enjoying these lore readings, and if you have, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.